Hey guys, welcome back to Critical Flick. Today I'll be reviewing The Good Nurse, now streaming on Netflix. So The Good Nurse is based on the true story of a serial killer named Charles Cullen, who's played by Eddie Redmayne, and the woman that was able to finally bring him to justice, played by Jessica Chastain. So obviously in this film it is telling the story of this serial killer who was a nurse who was charged with taking care of people, and then he decided to kind of just start killing people at random. He was injecting insulin into their IV bags and causing them to die from just really mysterious causes. And he was able to do this for many years. This was in like the late 90s to the early 2000s. It's a really bizarre story of a really truly disturbed individual. I do think that both of the actors in this film did a pretty solid job playing some really difficult roles. Eddie Redmayne as Charles Cullen was really disturbing. Many times he was playing someone who there's just not a lot going on behind the eyes. He's playing someone who is dealing with some severe inner demons, a really horrible person. And I think the fact that maybe as a society we don't really know why he did these things. I was reading some backstory about this, read kind of more about the true story that happened, and no one really knows why he did it, why he decided to do these horrible acts as someone who was supposed to be taking care of people. And I think Redmayne's able to really capture this kind of hollow individual and like really not a lot going on behind the surface. And he's so eerie in the fact that he does try to befriend people and try to be a good person, but then behind closed doors he's this horrific monster of a person. And I think that's one of the things that makes this movie excel in a way that maybe some other true crime media that's come out recently doesn't, for me individually. And that's because it doesn't really glorify this person. It makes him seem like a really deranged individual and focuses on trying to bring them to justice, focus on the atrocities and how just horrible the events were. It doesn't try to make it any kind of spectacular thing. It's just talking about the idea of you going somewhere like a hospital, seeking refuge, seeking help, and having that person that's supposed to be taking care of you end up taking your life for no reason, for just literally no reason. And I think it really captures that message about how bad this event was while still having it be a film that can be entertaining, but still having that message. One of the subplots also to this film is it focuses on kind of the broken nature of the American healthcare system and how this kind of for-profit and this insurance structure causes people to have bad things happen to them, whether they're not able to get care, whether things are kind of swept under the rug because the hospital itself doesn't want to fall under scrutiny, doesn't want to lose funding, doesn't want to get lawsuits. So it really does do both these things of telling this horrendous story about this real life person while also focusing on how something like this can happen and how the system fundamentally itself is broken. One of the ways that it does do this is it tells the story of Amy Lawfren, who's played by Jessica Chastain, who does bring Charles Cullen to justice. She's suffering from this heart disease that she's not able to get treated because she doesn't have insurance. And it's kind of bizarre watching an individual who's in a hospital taking care of people, a nurse, not being able to take care of herself because of a flawed system. So I do think it captures that messaging as well as this overarching story of this serial killer. I do think Chastain is really good in this role because she has to play someone who her world is like fundamentally falling apart physically and then emotionally because she becomes attached to this person who is helping her. He's in her home. She's looking to him as a best friend and finding out that he's this monster, and then her ability to kind of stand up for herself and stand up for the victims and take him down, even if she does have this emotional connection to him. There's some really chilling scenes in this film in between these two people because she knows what's happening. She's trying to capture him. It's this game of cat and mouse, and he is unaware of what's going on. And you see him coming into her home, taking care of her kids, and she's like, this is a killer that's in my home. And there's one moment in particular where she is sent to the hospital and he's taking care of her, and she is so worried that he's going to poison her. She doesn't know his intentions, and I do think those moments are where this movie does really excel in getting that tension and that messaging just right in your face without, like I said, making it a huge glorified thing about a serial killer. I will say the movie is about 2 hours long, and it does feel a little slow in places because this, like I said, it's not some huge grand story of someone going around attacking people. It intentionally drives home some of its messaging in a more nuanced way than trying to be this big grand story about a serial killer. And I think that helps the film, but someone watching it may feel that it moves a little bit slower, especially if you're expecting something with a lot of action and huge bombastic scenes. Also, the movie does have a pretty quick resolution, and if you know the true story at all, it really does kind of hold true to what happened. It doesn't try to make up excuses. It does have some pretty incredible scenes that are taking place in the interrogation room, which are some of the most impactful and emotional moments in the movie with some solid performances. But it doesn't ever try to explain things away or create a narrative that didn't exist in the real world. And I do merit the movie for doing that, but I do think someone who's watching it will just be like, well, why'd this happen? What happened? What's going on? But it's just such an eerie story about someone who seemingly is a somewhat normal person who's in a position of, power and care, taking advantage of that for no reason. I think that's the scariest thing. I think the unknown about this film and about the real life story is what makes it so unsettling and so unnerving. So if I were to rate The Good Nurse, I would give it an 8 out of 10. I think it's a really well acted film. I think it's an important story to be told. Whether it's, the most entertaining thing in the world isn't really what's important. I think it really drives home both the narrative of someone who is a horrible individual and a cautionary tale about taking these things seriously, as well as the American health system and how that can fail people in multiple ways. So I think it excels in doing both those things in a really cohesive story that's really well acted. So if you checked out The Good Nurse, let me know what you thought about it. Leave those comments down below. Remember to like and subscribe, and see you guys next time.